It is wonderful to be here. Welcome, Eagle educators. It's fantastic to be here on the Armstrong campus, which is a place that means so much to me. And also I want to say a warm hello to everyone who is online on Zoom and tuning in from the Statesboro campus. I'm really excited to have been given this opportunity to speak to you all and to your faculty and to all of the educators in the College of Education. Thank you so much. As Dr. Sabrina shared with everyone, I myself, again, I'm an alumna of the College of Education here from Armstrong not too long ago. And as you mentioned, my pathway into education was not traditional or not immediate in the sense that I didn't come into it right out of undergraduate, but it was the path that I was meant to take. And I'm confident that it served to benefit me in the end. The opportunities that I had to take along that path, to travel, to study abroad, to work with people across the country, to work with people across the globe, to get to understand the mechanisms of industry and commerce. I feel like that those things gave me perspectives and insights that I was able to bring into the classroom and share with my students. It inspired me to ensure that my students' experience was relevant to them, that it connected them to their community. And I didn't just want to connect them to their community in the smaller sense. I hope that I could connect them to their world in the greater sense, that because when we open our eyes to that greater world, we're able to make that world a better place, and we're able to make that world the place that it could be. So when I finally stepped into my classroom, I truly stepped into my passion. It's a passion that with each and every day, I truly believe in more and more, in spite of all the challenges and the roadblocks that I and my colleagues are encountering, not too infrequently, especially in this era of COVID. And it's my hope that what I share with you today will inspire you, those of you who are seeking to become educators and those of you who are already educators, to remain committed to this path and that you're embarking on, or this path that you've already chosen. It's incredibly painful to hear about potential teachers choosing to avoid that path, or even some of our veteran teachers stepping off of that path because it has become just too much. But I truly hope that what I share with you today will help you all realize or remember just how incredibly important what we do as educators is. Now, I'm not saying that it means that the profession is getting any easier, but I'm hoping that what I share with you can be a touchstone, and it shares with you our purpose, and that it's something that you know that it's something that you can take tremendous pride in as an educator. So this is my classroom calendar. And the last thing that I did before I turned the lights off on Friday, May 13th of 2020, and closed the door for spring break, was I changed the date to March the 23rd, thinking that it would be ready for when I got back. But we never came back again that school year, because on March 16th, we found out that we would be closed for in-person learning. So I did not see this calendar again for 5 months. And when I saw the calendar like that, the hair stood up on the back of my neck, because it was eerie to see how time had seemingly stood still. It was so strange to realize that so much had gone by. I was awestruck about how much had happened, and I was awestruck by how much had been accomplished in that stretch of time as well. So during that spring break week, the world shut down. But our district and our administrators and our teachers went into overdrive instead of using that break to catch their breath. What were they doing? They were preparing work packets for students and making plans for their distribution. They were developing a food service plan that would provide meals to students on a daily basis beginning on March the 23rd. They were assessing the technology needs of staff and students who would now be required to work from home. They were setting up Zoom accounts and Google Classrooms if they didn't have them, and learning very quickly how to use them, me included. They were communicating with parents in multiple languages about how to access all of these resources, and making sure that those children would be engaged and supported after spring break. Then what we thought might be days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, And as you all know, those months turned into over a year. At least in Savannah, Chatham County, it did, because we never went fully back in person 5 days a week until this school year. Now, whatever your personal or professional opinion may be about the matter of when children should have gone back to school, or how they should have gone back to school, or if they should have gone back to school at all, I believe that one of the greatest takeaways from this past 18 months plus and counting with COVID that I will advocate for, stump for, stick by, defend until I am blue in the face, is that every single Georgian and every single American can and should still believe in public education. And that happened right away in spring of 2020. Like so many of the essential workers who were on the front lines of the pandemic, educators were hailed as heroes. When school as we knew it was gone, the indispensable role that it plays in the lives of students and families and communities was completely laid bare. In August 2020, when educators stepped back into that fray because COVID didn't back down, once again, they were driven by what is most fundamental about what they do. And that was, how can we support our students and how can we support our families? Over the summer, the planning was a lot more proactive than it had been in March, but that did not make the execution any less challenging. It didn't make it any less stressful. We were all still carrying that ever-changing weight of so many personal and personal and public questions and uncertainties and opinions about things like operational decisions and health and safety protocols and effective instructional strategies for a virtual environment. But as challenging and as stressful as it was, educators and administrators responded, executing seismic shifts in the foundational ways that we teach, how we run schools, teach students, aid our families. Some of the most significant examples from Savannah, Chatham County: a new common learning management platform was rolled out. 25,000 Chromebooks and iPads were purchased and distributed so that 37,000 students could be one-to-one. Relationships with community partners were leveraged to quickly raise over $250,000 for the purchase of devices. Arrangements were made for families in need to receive either low-cost internet for their homes or hotspots for their homes. Instructional pacing guides were revised. Professional development workshops and seminars were related to distance learning and technology were offered through a common platform that would be accessible by staff either at home or at school. Communication and family engagement events were offered in multiple languages to ensure that our families were still in the know. A district-wide common workplace health and safety protocols were put into place in over 50 schools in the Savannah, Chatham County district. And free breakfasts and lunches for the school week were delivered by bus to neighborhoods, while community partners packed meals for the weekends for our students who qualified. And even though this wasn't perfect, there was no doubt that we gave everyone more than enough reasons to believe in public education. Educators were still committed to the most foundational principles. We would continue to provide universal access to free education. We would not waver in our dedication to protecting and advancing the social condition and the well-being of families. And our pledge to the health and safety of all students and staff was uncompromising. But the difference was that, unlike at the end of spring 2020, when educators were heralded as heroes, the criticism and the cynicism about public education began to percolate. In spite of the heart and soul that educators had poured into their commitment to the education of students in this COVID world that was completely beyond their control, they were hearkened back to pre-COVID times when criticism and cynicism could be unchecked. With the virtual and the hybrid learning, many of the criticism and cynicism was new, and educators did sympathize. We got it. My child needs the structure of in-person learning to keep him focused and motivated. He can't learn in a virtual environment. Private schools are back. Why can't we go back? I don't know how to help my child or how to work with the technology. I need to be at work. I can't afford to be away from home supervising my child. My child is suffering emotionally and being disconnected from his peers and his teachers. My child is missing out on the benefits of all the extracurriculars and on all the defining moments that fall outside of academics. And my child is behind. And I got it. Just like them, I worried. In fact, my son was a high school senior at Savannah Arts last year. He should have had a year filled with fanfare and traditions and rites of passage, but the majority of it was spent like this. And sometimes like this. Like the parents of a lot of my students, I picked my battles too. But you know what? In spite of it all, I still believe in public education. And I will continue to insist that everyone believe in public education. Public education in Georgia is big. There are 1.7 million students in public schools, 1 million of them eligible for free and reduced lunch, 199,000 of them qualifying for special education, 144,000 with limited English proficiency, 1 million using public school transportation. There are 2,300 schools, 118,000 teachers. That is a lot of minds to teach, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of buses to run, a lot of facilities to maintain, and a lot of teachers to support with materials and training and salary. It is a really big ship to steer, a very hard ship to steer. But now I want you to try to imagine our world without public education. Imagine if all those children were not taught, or their mouths were not fed, or their teachers were not supported in the manner that the students deserve. How could we reasonably sustain our present society? How could we ensure a sufficient workforce for the technologically advanced industries of the future, or for the small businesses that taken together fuel our economy? How could we preserve our robust democracy of ideas, thwart the perils of misinformation, or continue the progress that still needs to be made toward correcting societal imbalances of power? How can we make sure that our citizens are properly informed about the prudent choices that contribute to better physical and mental health? Questions like these establish that there are multiple vantages from which we can emphasize the function and the power and the even greater potential of public education, and why we must continue to believe in public education more than ever before. In the interest of time today, I'm going to touch upon two of those vantages: the economic impact, which comes at the topic from a very practical vantage, and the social impact, which is equally as important. So let's begin with the economics. Plain and simple, Georgia's economic pipeline is fueled by its economics, its education system. It has long been widely known that an educated workforce drives growth and productivity, and education level drives employability and worker earnings. But recent statistics drive the relevancy and the urgency of this matter home. In 2019, the Southern Regional Education Board estimated that by 2030, 1.5 million of Georgia's 4.2 million workers and their children might be unemployed or underemployed in low-paying jobs, contributing to the cycle of poverty. At the time, the board attributed that forecast to the increased automation of jobs, the shifting economy, and the education level of Georgians. But COVID has hastened the trend toward automated platforms, making Georgia's existing workforce that much more vulnerable. During COVID, workers possessing a high school diploma or less lost work at 3 times the rate as workers with a bachelor's degree. And low-wage and service sector jobs were hit more severely, meaning that our minorities were impacted at a higher rate of unemployment. And not surprisingly, the students of those workers proved to be our most vulnerable students. From March to May 2020, When schools across the country were shut down, 60% of low-income students participated in virtual learning versus 90% of high-income students. Only 75% of Black households and 68% of Latino households had computer access. And only 85% of Black households and 72% of Latino households had internet access. So by the fall of 2020, schools across the country made a valiant effort, a commendable effort, to get technology, meaning computers and internet access, into the hands of every child. But in reality, giving everyone a computer and internet access still did not level the playing field. In reality, different students have different needs. And some students need more support than others to give them access to the game. I saw it in my own ESOL students, the students I speak English to speakers, teaching English to speakers of other languages, right? I saw it in them. We gave them Chromebooks, we gave them iPads. Bilingual staff members helped them get low-cost internet. They called them before school, during school, after school, into the night to help them get connected to the internet, log into Zoom, use the learning management platforms. But those students were still distracted by moving from job site to job site with parents who worked manual labor, or by little siblings who they had to supervise during class because separate childcare wasn't affordable. And many of the parents lacked the education to be able to support their children. As schools have returned to in-person learning, we must believe in public education more than ever before because of the economic impact that it has on the future of our students as individuals and therefore on Georgia's society. Georgia's economic pipeline will only be strong if we ensure that all children have the opportunity to reach their greatest potential, if we ensure that we nurture and develop a workforce that will support industry and business so that that industry and business doesn't go elsewhere. That is not going to happen in a private system. It has to happen in a broad-reaching public system that serves all. If Georgia is going to produce peaches, we cannot fail at tending to its roots, its people, its children. The second vantage that I mentioned I would use to emphasize the function and the power and the even greater potential of public education is the social impact. The role of public education extends far beyond academics, providing a safety net for the most basic needs of so many students and families. 2019 data from the Annie E. Casey Foundation from before COVID already showed that 19% of Georgia children are living in poverty. That is 1 out of 5 children. 24% receive public assistance. That's 1 out of 4. 10% live in crowded housing. 7% are without health insurance. Over 9,700 have experienced a substantiated incident of child abuse or neglect, and over 12,000 aged 0 to 17 are in foster care. And as if those statistics were not troubling enough, then consider that during March 2021, 49% of households with children 0 to 17 had at least one household member who experienced a loss of employment since March 13th, 2020, when COVID was declared a national emergency. And during that same period, 14% of households with children reported that sometimes or often they didn't have enough to eat in the last week. What does that mean for the foundation's data on poverty, public assistance, crowded housing, health insurance, neglect, abuse for 2020 and 2021? We can only imagine what that data is going to look like. So we could give our students the fanciest computers, and we could fill our classrooms with mounds of manipulatives and train all of our teachers through to their PhDs. But if our students and their families are distracted by hunger, live in substandard housing, struggle with medical conditions for which they cannot or do not know how to get adequate care, or suffer from the mental strain of home life stress, abuse, or depression, the educational playing field remains unequal. The opportunity that the academic side offers to bring them to their greatest potential for the sake of themselves and greater society is completely stymied. Before COVID, and even more so now, every single day, teachers, instructional support personnel, administrators, nurses, counselors, school social workers will forever remain sentinels on the lookout for poverty and food scarcity and physical and mental health issues. Working with community partners to provide food on the weekends, screening students for medical issues like vision and hearing loss, meeting with students one-on-one to provide individualized counseling, visiting homes and referring families to relevant community resources and social services agencies. The foundation of school success, of student success in school is rooted in those relationships of trust, belonging, and continuity that are built when educators consistently and without hesitation are able to respond to the whole child. And the social impact is not just about the safety net that public education provides for those students. The social impact of education extends far beyond the individual, beyond the family, beyond your city, beyond your state, your country. The social impact of education reaches out and wraps itself around the entire world. Education is one of the greatest opportunities that we have in our society to nurture empathy, acceptance, and mutual respect, to activate cooperative problem-solving skills and positive interdependence, and to model self-reflection and healthy, authentic dialogue and communication. And taken together, these are the foundations for peace, for equity, and for mutual understanding. Therefore, I believe in public education more than ever before. Like the military defends us from external forces, I view public education as our defense against internal forces that are just as capable of dismantling our society. An educated society is safer and healthier. It is thoughtful and reflective and inquisitive. It is discursive and collaborative and productive. It seeks solutions that build up rather than tear down. When our society invests in public education, and I do not just mean financially, the rewards are exponential, not only for the individual children in the classroom, but for our greater society, our greater world that directly benefits from those children having been educated. When we put students first, they will thrive, and our society will thrive. And so our society should believe in public education more than ever before, for its children and for itself. We need to believe in its capacity to provide opportunity and services to all, no matter their intellectual or physical ability, their cultural background, or their income. Believe in its ability to raise stereotypes and to nurture the diversity that truly defines our nation and our world. Believe in its ability to provide multiple pathways to success, be they college prep or vocation, STEM, or the arts. Believe in its ability to provide children with a safe place to find their footing when the world outside of the school walls might be crumbling in ways that we cannot even personally imagine. Believe in its educators, the majority of whom are working incessantly, planning and creating, collaborating, strategizing, delighting, and worrying for those students whom they love as if they were their own children. There were more than enough reasons to believe before, but through the devastation of the COVID pandemic, we have gained invaluable insights into how our students learn and how they don't learn, and into how truly valuable our classroom relationships are to our students and our families and our communities. The blinders to the magnitude of the vulnerability within our communities have been torn off. And though many doors were tragically closed by COVID, one has been opened. And it is an opening through which, together with our shared purpose and our tremendous passion as educators, we can reinvent and reinvigorate public education so that it can be all that it was meant to be, and so that every single one of its students and our society and our world can be too. And it starts when we believe in public education more than ever before. Thank you so very much.